Welcome to the BLIC method, where today we are going to be learning how to factor a trinomial written out in this form of x squared plus bx plus c. We have three terms. It's trinomial specifically in this form. And I want to first start by talking about what the end result would look like. Remember, factoring means that we're going to take one piece of information and break it up into the product of two parts. Just like we would say the factor of 24 is 6 times 4, or 1 times 24. Two parts being multiplied together. So what we're trying to do here is take this single trinomial and break it up into a binomial times a binomial. It's a good thing that you paid attention in the last sections, because we learned how to do this. We learned how to multiply two binomials together, and our end results ended up looking like that. So basically what we're doing, you just learned the FOIL method or the distributive property or using a table to multiply binomials together. Now we're going to undo that. All right, so we're taking this and turning it into that. All right, let's get started on how we do this. Before we start, we are dealing with three types of problems here. This one, every term is positive. So in green, I'm going to say all positive terms. Okay, so that is the one where everything is a positive value. And our second one, our b value being the middle term, okay, that's a negative. So our b is negative. In red, let's say b is negative. All right. And then this scenario here, our c, the constant at the end, the term without the variable attached, that one is negative. So in this case, c is negative. Now there are three very different problems that we're looking at here, and you have situations that you get yourself in where you have to realize, okay, oh, my b is negative here. So you're going to have to tackle that problem differently than you would this one. It's a very small switch, so pay attention as I go through each one, and by the end of this, it should all make sense. All right, so how do we factor out a trinomial such as this one? The first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to make a box, okay? Now, that box should have two columns to it. In the first column, you're going to write out the factor of the c value. Factor of the c value. The c value is the ending term. Here it's 24, here it's 8, and here it's negative 36, our c term. So what is the factors of 24? List them out, okay? You're going to list each one of those out, and then all we have to do over here on the right side is find the sum of each one. And this table is going to give us exactly what our result should be for the factor of that trinomial. Okay, let's get started by writing out our factors of 24. Factors of c, in this case, it's a 24. So we're going to say 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, and 4 times 6. Now we're going to add each of those values together, and we're hoping to find the one that adds together to make an 11. It should match the middle term, or in other words, the b value. So 1 plus 24, that ain't going to work. That's a 25. That's way too high. Remember, we're trying to get an 11. 2 plus 12, that makes 14, a little bit too high still. 3 plus 8 would add together to make our 11. This is going to be a check mark right there. Check it. You found what you needed to. That's the information you're going to use. Go through the last one. Might as well just make sure there wasn't an error. Okay, there's only one of those rows that when we multiply together makes 24, and when we add them together makes an 11. And I will show you right when we're done why this box kind of magically tells us what our answer or our result should be. Okay, so again, we're going to have two binomials multiplied by each other. This is going to be our answer. This is the factoring of this trinomial. How would I get an r squared? If we're doing the FOIL method, first term times first term, if those are both r's, they're going to multiply together and make r squared. Okay, now I just steal this term and this term from my table. It's as simple as that. Find the one that added together to make an 11, and you're going to use those two numbers right there. That's a 3 and an 8. So I'm going to say positive 3 and positive 8. Okay? So my answer, or my result, is r plus 3 times r plus 8. We are done. We have factored it. Now, why does that work? Well, let's go over that fairly quickly. If I do first, r times r, I'm going to get r squared. If I do outside, I'm going to make it 8r. If I do inside, I'm going to make a 3r. And then if I do my last, those last terms are always going to multiply together. They don't have a variable attached to them, so they're going to make your constant. 8 times 3 makes the 24 that we're looking for. Now, why did I make the 11 with the 3 and the 8? Because they added together. I found that those two would add together and make the 11. I could have put a 2 and a 12 down, 2 and 12. That would have made this part correct and this part correct, but it would not have made an 11r in the middle. If I used 2 and 12, it would have made a 14 in the middle. Okay? So this is your answer. This is factoring this trinomial. All right? Now, how does it change when the b is negative? Well, if the b is negative, remember we had to add something together, two numbers together to make negative 6. How do you add two numbers together to make negative 6? It's not a trick question. Just one of them's got to be negative, or both of them have to be negative. We've got to determine if only one or both should be negative. Okay, remember we're going to add these two numbers together and get negative 6. That's our hope. But if I have a positive and a negative value, my end result as a sum could be negative, but my product can't be. Okay, I'm trying to make a positive 8. The only way to multiply two numbers together, one of them being negative and making a positive 8, is if both of them are negative. So in this case, our table, as I listed out, factors of 8, and it's a positive 8, I need to write out two numbers that are both negative, because the only way that I can multiply two numbers together to make a positive 8 is if both of them are negatives. Okay, so I'm going to say negative 8 times negative 1, and I'm going to say negative 4 times negative 2. And there's really only two options with this, though. Negative 8 times negative 1 or negative 4 times negative 2. Then we're going to find the sum of those two numbers. Negative 8 plus a negative 1 makes a negative 9. And then I can go up and check, and no, that's not what we want. We want a negative 6. Negative 4 plus a negative 2 would make a negative 6. Check mark. We are going to use those two numbers to write out our binomial. Okay, if I want a y squared, that means first term has to be y. First term of the second binomial has to be a y. Sorry, didn't mean to do that. And then these two parts are going to come from my table. It gives me the result. Negative 4 and negative 2. All right? Now in this last one, we got to think about how in the world do we multiply two numbers together and make a negative 36. The only way to multiply two values together and get a negative result is if one of them is positive and one of them is negative. All right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to list out our table. It's going to be a fairly lengthy table here. I'm going to write this a little bit smaller and underneath so I get more room. Y minus 4 times y minus 2. Okay, now this table is going to be fairly long. Factors of 36. But the important thing here is that 36, I'm going to make that bigger. It's a little bit small for you to see. That 36 is a negative. Factors of negative 36. There are a lot of them. We have negative 36 times 1, or it could be negative 1 times 36. Okay, you got to list both of them out. It could be negative 2 times 18, or negative 18 times 2. It could be -3 times 12, or it could be -12 times 3. It could be -9 times 4, or -4 times 9. Or it could be -6 times a 6. Look at how many of those there are. Now, only one of these is going to work. Okay, we need to find the one that's going to add together to make a +9. So if you just add these real quick, you're going to get -35. Nope. Here you're going to get 35. No. Here you'd get a 16. Here you'd get a -16. Notice the pattern that's happening. Here you would get a +9. Check that. That is what we're hoping for. So we're going to use these two numbers. Now you can go through and finish the rest of this out if you choose, just to make sure there's not a mistake. But we have found the two values that we can write our binomials out with. So I'm going to go right to it right now. N times another n would make my n squared. Use my -3 and my +12. And now, just to prove to you that we've done this correctly, let's work it out. Let's use the FOIL method. And when we're done with the FOIL method, we should get this as a result. First terms, n times n makes n squared. Outside terms, n times +12 makes a +12n. Inside terms, -3 times n makes -3n. And last terms, -3 times +12 will make a -36. Combine those two together, and you're going to get a +9n. Bring everything else down, and look at that. It checks out perfectly. So we have factored a C being negative, a B being negative, and when everything is positive. The big difference that you need to be able to understand is that when everything's positive, both of these are going to be positives. When the B is negative, both of these should be negatives. And when the C is negative, only one of them is negative and one of them is positive. Okay? I want you to practice that, play around with it a little bit. The more and more that you do these, the more and more they make sense. Remember, answers are always going to be two binomials being multiplied together by each other. All right, study hard and good luck on your upcoming test.